You are not short on time. You have never been short on time. What you are short on is the willingness to admit what you are doing with it. This is not an accusation. It is, in fact, the most compassionate thing anyone has said to you about your relationship with time in years. Because it means the problem is not structural, not inevitable, not the result of an impossibly busy life that simply has no room left. The problem is something you can actually change. And the man who first said this, with startling clarity and zero apology, was a Roman philosopher named Lucius Annaeus Seneca, writing sometime around 49 AD in a short essay called De Brevitate Vitae, on the shortness of life. He wrote it as a letter to his father-in-law. He might as well have written it to you this morning before you opened your phone. It is not that we have a short time to live, Seneca wrote, but that we waste a great deal of it. And then he did something that no productivity guru, no time management app, no inbox zero system has ever quite managed to do with the same precision. He named exactly where the time goes. Not to great catastrophes, not to unavoidable obligations, but to distraction, to restlessness, to the endless consumption of other people's noise, to pleasures that leave you emptier than before, to anxiety about a future that doesn't exist yet, and regret about a past you cannot touch. Sound familiar? It should. Seneca was writing about you. He just didn't have the word for it yet. We do. We call it doomscrolling. Think about what you did yesterday, between the hours of 7 and 9 in the evening. Not what you intended to do, what you actually did. For a large portion of people reading or listening to this right now, the honest answer involves a phone, a sofa, and a sequence of content that was not chosen so much as encountered. One video led to another. One article opened 3 tabs. One notification pulled you out of something you were trying to do and deposited you somewhere else entirely. And by the time you looked up, 40 minutes had gone, and you couldn't quite account for them. And the vague dissatisfaction you felt when you sat down had somehow gotten heavier, not lighter. You were trying to rest. You ended up more tired. Seneca would have recognized this immediately, not the technology, but the mechanism, because the technology is new, but the mechanism is ancient. The mechanism is what he called Negotium sine fructu, business without fruit, busyness that looks like activity and functions like avoidance. He saw it in the Roman aristocracy of his era, men who filled their days with social calls they didn't want to make, banquets that bored them, political maneuvering that exhausted them, and yet could not seem to stop. They were busy every hour of every day and had nothing to show for it at the end. Not knowledge, not craft, not deep relationships, not peace. Just the blurred sensation of time having passed. Does that sound like a different era to you, or does it sound like your calendar? The Stoic relationship with time begins with a premise that is both obvious and genuinely difficult to internalize. Time is the only resource you cannot recover. Money lost can be earned back. Relationships damaged can sometimes be repaired. Health compromised can sometimes be restored. But the hour you spent this afternoon in a fog of passive consumption, that hour is gone. Not deferred, not saved somewhere for later. Gone. Seneca was almost aggressive about this. He wrote that we should act toward time the way a miser acts toward money, guarding it jealously, accounting for every portion, refusing to let it be taken without deliberate exchange. Not because life should be joyless or relentlessly productive in the modern, anxious sense of that word, but because time, properly understood, is not something you have, it is something you are. To waste it carelessly is not a scheduling problem, it is an identity problem. And here is where Seneca becomes uncomfortable in a way that most modern productivity advice carefully avoids. He is not interested in helping you do more things faster. He is not offering you a better system for managing your tasks. He is asking you something far more destabilizing. Do you know what you actually want? Because the real reason most people waste time is not laziness, not lack of discipline, not poor planning. It is that they have not answered the prior question. They have not decided what their time is for. And so, in the absence of a clear answer, the default takes over. The algorithm, the notification, the path of least resistance, the thing that is immediately available and asks nothing of you. You didn't choose distraction. You just failed to choose anything else. This is the Stoic diagnosis of modern busyness. Not that you are doing too much, but that you are doing too much of the wrong thing in order to avoid sitting with the uncertainty of what the right thing might be. The scroll is not laziness, it is escape. It is what happens when the question of how to spend your life feels too large and too unanswerable, and the phone offers something small and manageable and immediate instead. Every time you open an app without intention, you are not relaxing, you are deferring. And deferral, compounded over days and weeks and years, is what Seneca meant when he said that some people reach old age having never actually lived. Now bring in another Stoic concept that transforms how you think about attention, the idea of the present moment as the only thing that is actually real. Marcus Aurelius returned to this again and again in his private journals. The past is memory. The future is imagination. The only place where your life is actually happening is now, this specific moment, this particular hour. And yet, by some remarkable act of mental gymnastics, modern life has convinced you to be almost everywhere except here. You are reading the news about things that already happened or haven't happened yet. You are watching other people live their lives. You are performing your own life for an imagined audience on platforms designed, at the engineering level, to make you feel that what is happening elsewhere is always more important than what is happening in front of you. The present becomes a waiting room for the next notification. Marcus Aurelius would call this a form of self-abandonment. To be absent from your own life, physically present but mentally somewhere else, is not rest and it is not engagement. It is a kind of slow disappearance. And the antidote he returned to, day after day in those journals, was almost embarrassingly simple. Do the thing in front of you. Do it fully. Do it as if it matters, because it does, because it is the only thing that is actually real. Not the thing you're planning for next week, not the thing you're worried happened last month. The thing right here. The meal in front of you, the person across from you, the work on your desk, the walk you're taking. That is where your life lives. Anywhere else is abstraction. But let's be honest about what makes this difficult, because the Stoics were honest too. The reason you check your phone before you get out of bed is not purely weakness of character. It is that the phone was designed, by some of the most sophisticated behavioral psychologists and product designers on Earth, to be checked before you get out of bed. The variable reward system that drives social media engagement is the same mechanism that makes slot machines addictive. You are not failing to resist a temptation. You are failing to resist an industrial-scale machine built to exploit the same neurological pathways that kept your ancestors scanning the horizon for predators. The distraction is not accidental. It is the product. Epictetus would look at this situation and make a distinction that cuts right through it. The machine is not in your control. Your response to it is. You cannot change what Silicon Valley has built. You cannot make the algorithm less sophisticated, or the notification less immediate, or the content less engineered for engagement. What you can change, the only thing you have ever been able to change, is what you do when the pull arrives. That split second between stimulus and response. That tiny gap where your reason still lives. The Stoics called the cultivation of that gap ascesis, practice. And like every form of practice, it starts small and builds through repetition. You don't reclaim your attention in one dramatic act of renunciation. You reclaim it one deliberate choice at a time. Concretely, what did Seneca actually recommend? He recommended what he called recollection, gathering yourself back from the scattered places your attention has gone. He recommended examining, at the end of each day, how you had spent it and whether that spending aligned with what you said you valued. Not as a performance of productivity, not to feel guilty about the hours lost, but as the honest accounting of a person who takes their own life seriously. He recommended protecting the morning, not for email, not for other people's agendas, but for thought, for reading, for the kind of slow, generative attention that makes everything else possible. He recommended choosing, deliberately and in advance, what deserved your time, and then actually giving it that time, without the fragmented, half-present quality that makes even good work feel hollow. And here is the part that separates Seneca from every productivity influencer who has ever quoted him on a thumbnail. He did not think you should spend your reclaimed time being more productive in the conventional sense. He thought you should spend it becoming more fully yourself, reading philosophy, deepening friendships, sitting with a hard question until something real emerged, creating something that mattered to you, even if it mattered to no one else. The goal was not output. The goal was vita beata, the happy life, the full life, the life that looked, at the end, like it had actually been lived rather than merely elapsed. There is a question Seneca poses in De Brevitate Vitae that I want to leave with you, because it is the question that reorganizes everything once you let it settle. He asks, would you be willing, right now, to give up a portion of your remaining years in exchange for getting back the time you have already wasted? Most people, when they really think about it, say yes. Of course yes. They would trade future days for the hours they spent scrolling, the evenings lost to passive consumption, the mornings stolen by other people's urgency before they'd had a chance to find their own. And Seneca says, good. Then you understand at last that time is not something you were given to use however you like. It is the substance of your life. Every hour is a choice about who you are and what matters to you. Not in theory, in practice, right now. You are not short on time, you never were. You are standing in the middle of your own life, and the only question that has ever actually mattered is whether you are going to show up for it. Not tomorrow, not after the next thing settles down, now, this hour, the one that is already moving whether you choose it or not.